Walking a path along the roots of Pikes Peak, you take a fork in the road to the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Inside is a raucous conversation on the arts, faith, and how, in 500 years, nobody will know any of us ever existed. At a corner table by the fire are three people. One of them is consoling himself with the thought that, if nothing else, future generations will recognize him as a fellow Ravenclaw. And that's me, Matthew Mellema, and welcome to Believe to See, a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. Here at Believe to See, we explore the relationship between arts, faith, and storytelling. Our goal is to help you connect the great story, the great stories, and our own stories in order to understand what it means to live with a Christian imagination. So I have this memory from back in college. I was on the couch in my buddy's dorm room and flipping through the many pages of my Norton Literary Anthology. I was an English major. I noticed that my page number, 1986, was the year I was born, 1986. So curious, I flipped ahead to page 2076. That's the page number year I would be 90 years old. A pretty good run by most standards. I held those 90 pages between my fingers, aghast at how thin they were compared to the vast swaths of pages both before and after it. For a great and terrible moment, I contemplated the thin sliver of my life in the vast swath of human history, the vapor of my days compared to the ocean of eternity. Now, my next impulse was to shake off this feeling as soon as possible and play some video games. But today, I want to dive back into that feeling of smallness compared to the passage of time. But instead of just me, I want to talk about all of us in today's society. So here it is. How will people in the future, say 500 years from now, view today's art? What are the novels, movies, songs, whatever, that will still be relevant and important to people in the year 2525? Wow, even saying that year sounds weird and made up. But that's our topic today. What art from today will still be relevant in 500 years? And why? Here to untangle this question with me are the two co-hosts, Mandy Hauk and Christina Brown. Mandy, Christina, welcome to the table.
Thank you for dragging us back into your smallness.
Thank you. Yes, it was great. I want to be vapor on an ocean so vast.
Oh, yes.
My melancholy fourness is happy with the, what do you call it? The small sliver in a swathe of large, I don't know what
Yeah, something about that. It was
wonderfully
It was a whole moment I had, but
It was a whole moment.
It was good, but it's past.
that's right. It's
Like
a few pages away. It seems like forever ago. It was 18 years ago, which in the flow of humanity, the cosmos, is nothing, less than nothing. Grain of sand on a giant beach. Woo! So anyway, I wanted to talk about what art from today's world will still be relevant in the future. So as part of that, I asked you both to create a list of works from the contemporary world that you think will still be around. So Mandy, you put together a list. Let's not get into the specifics of the list yet, but in general, how did you feel about putting the list together?
My feelings varied. No.
I had several different feelings.
I love the premise. It's intriguing. It's also daunting because I feel like I don't know enough to make a really good list. And so I want to pre-apologize. And I hope the listeners won't think I'm a total plebeian.
You don't know enough about the year 2525?
I don't know enough about
What?
I don't know enough, particularly for visual arts. I don't know names, and so I just feel like I don't want to disappoint the listener. I'm just gonna say what I say. So so you asked us to think about what makes art last, and that was the part of the assignment that I really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. But then making the list, I just felt like, oh, this is probably...
Well, this was sort of a two-part assignment. Thank you for reading both parts of it. There's the list of...
I'm a rule follower.
There's one, the list of works we think might endure 500 years from now. And two, there's the criteria we used.
Yes.
Why did we come to this conclusion?
Right. And that was the part I really enjoyed, was thinking about the criteria.
All right. Now, over to you, Christina. Now, I should say, listeners, originally I told them keep it to the 21st century, right? So 2000 and beyond. One of us, I won't say exactly who,
Not the rule follower.
she was like, I can't really think of any of the past 25 years. Can I go back to 1950?
I didn't
So,
say that.
No, that was
well, this is the hypothetical person. So, yeah, so why did you say
I
that?
said-
25 years is not a whole lot of time to choose from. Can we go back 75?
She just wanted to have more fodder.
I wanted more fodder. Although I did say I don't know.
Okay.
enough people.
That she
Okay.
didn't say she doesn't know enough. She just said she wanted more fodder. Don't misquote.
Matt, I don't read anything past 1950. If it's 1951, it's out of there. Modernization coming in. Hype writers, no, I'm out. But anyway, Christina, it seems like one of your observations was you didn't feel like there was enough fodder in the past 25 years. You felt like you need to expand your scope. But what were some other observations you made?
Well, yeah, I mean, first, I wanted to expand the scope just a tiny bit because if we're talking about 500 years from now, I figured it would be fair to have a little bit more than 25 years to kind of pick from, just because good art kind of has to take a bit of time to sort of form. But anyway, my feelings, those are actually really fun. I don't think that I thought deeply about the question before. I mean, people say that, like, what, you could live 500 years, what would you do? Where would you be? Where's humanity going to be in 500 years? There's all those questions. But this one was particularly interesting because you had to start thinking, well, what are the qualifications and why? And, kind of go back like, well, what other art forms have lasted and why? So, yeah, I found it to be fun. And I was actually also had a really good time trying to think of different kinds of art forms that have lasted.
All right. And yes, to that point, let's get the obvious caveats because 500 years is enough time where, newsflash, we don't know what the world's going to be like. Will people still even be living on Earth? Will we all be living on Elon Muskberg on the planet Mars? I don't know. We don't know. So this is an exercise in what we think will happen, but it's something that we just don't have the information for.
Unless this podcast lasts 500 years, no one will know
There we
if you're
go.
right or wrong.
There we go. I like to believe podcasts will last through the centuries.
Sure.
But to set the scene for this, it really is fascinating on what works endure and what ones don't. Because especially when you look at the ancient world, so much of it is happenstance. If you really want to depress yourself, Wikipedia has a whole page on works of literature that have just been lost to the ages. We know they exist from references in other works, but we have lost the works. So, very famously, Aristotle had a treatise or an essay on comedy that's just been lost to history. The existence of that work is one of the premises of The Name of the Rose. So that's a very famous lost work. But if you look at, just to take one example that happens to be on my mind, the playwrights of ancient Athens, like Sophocles, Aeschylus, they wrote so many plays, and we have a handful. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's like Sophocles wrote like 70 plays, we have 3. Aeschylus, like 50 plays, we have 4. Something like that. And are these, the ones that we have, are they the best plays? I mean, probably not just on the force of numbers, right? They're just the ones that happen to survive. And you think, what if future generations, after the nuclear winter goes away and the mutant cannibals are fought off and people are starting to rebuild society, if all they have are the fragments that happen to survive, what would they be? It's like, oh, well, it's half of the second Twilight book and Police Academy 4. It's like, who knows? Who knows? So that's part of it. And also some of the works that we do have, it's really kind of serendipity. Like Beowulf, the quintessential saga of Anglo-Saxon England, at least we think, it's the one we have. We have it because of a single manuscript that was written sometime in the 10th century and somehow endured in this library. It partially caught fire at one point. Parts of it are singed. It's just remarkable that we have this at all. And again, this staggeringly important work that on Earth 2 we probably don't have. how many staggeringly important works have we lost through similar processes, right? The one manuscript was caught on fire in the 1200s. Same thing with Epic of Gilgamesh. This was written thousands and thousands of years ago, the first epic that we know of. It was discovered in the 19th century with an archaeological find that found an ancient library. So a lot of this is real happenstance, and it makes you think, sorry to get even more depressed, how much of our stuff is even going to be preserved? A lot of our stuff is digital materials. When that all breaks down, will a lot of it just sort of vanish into the ether? After the comet hits the Earth, and President Kanye West is unable to do anything to stop it, maybe it'll all just disappear.
You're upsetting.
Before we all get on the rocket ship to Elon Muskberg on the planet Mars. And even then, even if people do, again, they find half of the second Twilight book in Police Academy 4, how are they going to know, were these considered the great works of art? Were they merely popular? Or were they just minor works that we happen to have? We don't know.
It is funny. I mean, so much of the Iliad and the Odyssey, that's taught us so much about Greek history and things they did because it's in a story. There's just so much that we don't know that your mind would is this what people really were like? Just because they find a fragment of a story.
Exactly. Exactly. You find, the last chapter of Where the Crawdads Sing, and then 50 Shades of Grey, and you're like, this is what the people were like in this era.
You're putting me in a really bad mood.
But, and to that point, for Iliad and the Odyssey, a lot of folks assume material that they know about, that epic is from those works, but it's not. The Iliad ends with Hector's funeral games. The Trojan horse, that's not in there. It's from other sources sort of around this era. And there's other well-known works dealing with the Trojan War that we know about that have been lost to history.
Yeah.
Now, the good news there is that the consensus of the classical period is that by far the two best were the Iliad and the Odyssey. So we have the best, but there's other works that were out there and that were well-regarded that we just lost.
Wait, how do we know they're the best if we lost the others?
Well, we don't know that, but the sources at the time regarded the Iliad and the Odyssey as the best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
So that has got me down this other rabbit hole, and that's looking back to 500 years ago. And I'll admit, I used ChatGPT because I think this is one of the narrow uses where I think it's good, because it gives you the gist of the internet, right? It doesn't do independent thought, but it gives you the gist. So I was asking, what works from 500 years ago are still popular today? And, they gave Sir Philip Sidney, they gave Edmund Spenser, they gave some other folks who wrote in French and Italian who I've never heard of. And again, I'm an English major, so I should know something about these. But really the one person from around 500 years ago who the person on the street knows about is Shakespeare, right? The others, maybe some people know about Sidney and Spenser, a few others.
Literature majors.
Yeah, literature majors. But the man on the street knows about Shakespeare, and that's probably it. So, again, just sort of to give you a flavor of how this all works, how did the contemporaries view Shakespeare? If we were doing this podcast in the year, say, 1610, right? So right before Shakespeare retires from the theater, and we were putting together this list, what will be popular 500 years from now? Would we have included Shakespeare? The answer is probably not. In his lifetime, Shakespeare, it's very hard to judge from the contemporary sources, right? But as far as we can tell, Shakespeare was a well-regarded playwright, but he was one of several well-regarded playwrights, along with Ben Jonson, Chris Marlowe, Beaumont and Fletcher. These other artists were considered his peers. No one would have thought that, 500 years from now, everyone knows of Shakespeare, but no one knows about Ben Jonson, except for English majors. That just wasn't the case. And plays during that time weren't necessarily thought of as high art. They were a popular form of entertainment. They're things that normal people went to. They're kind of like movies, and not especially highbrow movies. The highbrow people kind of looked askance at plays, right? So you really wouldn't have thought of Shakespeare during his lifetime as being the sort of person who'd be important 500 years later. You'll see Shakespeare died in 1616, toward the end of the 17th century, so 1690s or so. By that time, several folios, so paper prints of his plays have been printed. and they meet with increasing critical success. So for a while, the critics started to appreciate Shakespeare. But into the next century, that didn't translate into the plays. So Shakespeare was performed in the 1700s, about the same as Ben Jonson, not nearly as much as Beaumont and Fletcher.
Really?
Yeah. Even though the critics thought Shakespeare was better, the people like Beaumont and Fletcher way better. And it wasn't until like the Romantics really picked up on Shakespeare, and then into the 19th century, you know, the Victorians really picked up on Shakespeare, viewed him as like a crown jewel of British culture and all this stuff, that he became Shakespeare. So this is a several centuries long process of a guy who was one of several successful people in a not particularly fancy art form to being nearly universally accredited as the greatest English writer of all time. Someone who, me and Mandy were talking about Shakespeare adaptations before we started recording. Like, there's really these contingencies, and it's very hard to predict. So it could be the author, the movie director who's going to be remembered 500 years from now is like someone we view as like, okay.
Right.
And their reputation will just explode 100 years after their death.
Okay, I feel less potentially stupid. So
Well, there you go.
I'm thinking too, it could be as simple as some, a relative who said, you know what, I think my dad's work is worth preserving. Or,
yeah.
like there's something about that sort of thing that.
Hey, Sam Mellema, listen up.
That's right, Sam. If you find that folder where I'm writing my next little story about dinosaurs, don't just delete it after I die. I know you'll want to. But
You find your father's journal entries, we'd all like to see this.
but yeah, like someone Oh gosh, no, that gets burned. But you look at someone like George Herbert. He didn't the great English devotional poet.
Yes.
He didn't publish in his lifetime. He was just a priest, and he left his collection of poems to a friend. And the friend, he left a note. It's like, hey, if you find these useful and helpful, maybe look into printing them. If not, just chuck them in the fire.
Peter's father's mother, so his paternal grandmother, was a poet, but nobody knew until she died. Because when she was young, her family laughed at her poetry. So she couldn't stop writing it, but she never showed anyone. And then it actually was heartbreaking because she was brilliant. Like her vibe was like Emily Dickinson kind of vibe. Like, and she has all this beautiful poetry that it really broke Peter's father's heart because he was also a writer and he didn't know this. That his mother, yeah. So, yeah, beautiful. I mean, he knew she was a beautiful writer just from letters and things, but he didn't know she was a poet. So, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
Jean Hauk, maybe she will be.
maybe it's her,
Maybe
right?
it's her.
But yeah, that sort of leads into this main part of the discussion where it could be any number of people.
Yep.
We don't know. Maybe, again, when they're listening to this on new Elon Muskberg, they'll be able to look back on this. I know. I'm painting quite a future, right? President Kanye West, the comets, escaping to Mars.
Pretty
Yeah.
sure Kanye West is not going to live 500 years.
We don't know that.
Right.
Oh, his intelligence will be just uploaded into ChatGPT.
Yes.
So, anyway, so with that, after I freaked Mandy out,
Horrifying scenario.
one possible future is so now let's get into our lists because
Our list or did you want to know our?
let's start with the criteria. Thank you, Mandy.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is why podcasts are a team thing.
I'm proud of my.
So Mandy, when you're going through works in today's world that you think could last 500 years from now,
Yes.
what criteria were you using?
My criteria are kind of contradictory, but the first one is timelessness. And by timelessness, I think the way art achieves timelessness is that it gets to the core of what it means to be human. And because we are all Imago Dei, there is a core to that. I think in modern day, I think sometimes we're taught that, oh, there's no one way to, and of course there's no one way, but there is a core. There's a seed, there's an imago Dei, and some art touches on that and just hits it. And so I think timelessness, but somewhat contradictory, a solid grounding in the time and place in which it was created, I think is also important. So it has to be timeless, but I think it also has to be resonant and pertinent to the time that it was created, grounded in that specific reality, so it retains the flavor of the time that it was made, and it couldn't necessarily have been made in just any time. Does that make sense?
Think about Shakespeare, actually.
Yeah, because it is timeless, because dang, he understood the human in all of its glory and depravity and humor.
Yep.
But you know when he wrote it. And
Well, you know when he wrote it, and he also invented so much of the language.
he invented elbow. Did you know that?
No.
The word elbow. Yep.
See, I mean, that's just the thing. So
Yeah.
I would say he's a good criteria.
Yeah, so you guys are on the same page here.
Whoa. Yeah.
Matt and Mandy on the same page? Never.
I know. And or I also think an important thing is that it draws connections. So even if it doesn't feel like necessarily super grounded in that time and place, it at least draws connections between past, present, and an imagined future. Like like it pricks the curiosity about that kind of thing. And I also think that it's important that it changes the person who's experiencing the art in some way. Like it challenges their perceptions. It leaves a mark on them.
I think that sort of tension that you lay out actually makes a lot of sense, because on the one hand, there needs to be a timeless quality about it. But on the other hand, it needs to be representative in some way of its time.
There you go.
Yeah, the representativeness makes sense, because you can just picture like the textbooks of the future when they're just imprinted onto our corneas or whatever, where it's like, okay, what's the
Retinas, maybe.
yeah, there you go,
That's
there you go.
yeah. And
But you can think like, oh, what works are significant about what was going on in, the early 21st century or whatever.
yeah.
So that's part of it. So it's an important like cultural thing. Like, one of the reasons Canterbury Tales is so important, one of the many reasons, is that it's a great snapshot of England at a particular time.
And it helps us connect to it because of the time.
Exactly. But
there's also a huge cultural commentary going on in it.
That's what connects us to that time period and helps us even want to understand.
exactly. On the one hand, it shows this culture that's very alien to ours, but on the other hand, there's this human connection where we can understand the humans from, the Canterbury Tales, because Chaucer's able to capture their humanity in a way that still resonates with us.
There you go. Yep.
So now we've got the criteria, Mandy. Let's
So now you want my list?
yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, I was trying to be as broad with art as I could, but I mean, let's just face it. I'm a novel junkie, and I don't know nor consume other kinds of art as often. So my longer list is is novels. So one example is Piranesi.
Mm-hmm.
So that one for sure it hits the timeless. I don't think it really hits the solid grounding in the time and place. And Piranesi is the reason that I added or it at least draws connections, because I had to include Piranesi. The real reason I think Piranesi is just so singular, and there is not like I don't know how you would make a list of comps to Piranesi necessarily, because like who else wrote a book like that specifically? But at the same time, she has very notable and noticeable allusions to other very important works of art, like C.S. Lewis is all over the place in that. And so that she touches on other kind of key and recognizable works of art from other time periods. But then she also has the timelessness and the humanity in there.
Yeah, I was actually thinking like of these parallel lists, where the ones that I thought would endure, the ones where it's like, if I could pick works to like hand to people 500 years from now, the ones I want to endure, Piranesi was at the top of the list for me. It's like, here, person living on Mars, you need to read this. This is what you need to understand us.
So, and that is the of all of my stuff, that is the one I'm the most sure of. The other ones I'm like, but that's the one I feel the most confident of, and yeah. So some other ones, if I shouldn't have started with it's all downhill from here. No, so I would say, so works by some of the authors that I think might endure. And these are the timelessness is key in everything I picked. But also these are particularly hitting the criteria of time and place, like really illuminating the time and place that they're writing about, and challenging perception. So those are works by Colson Whitehead. He wrote The Nickel Boys, Underground Railroad, in which he imagines the Underground Railroad as an actual train. But at the same time, he imagines the stops. It's almost like Gulliver's Travels. So Percival Everett, who a book that I have mentioned of his on the podcast, James, just won the Pulitzer. So I was right that it was good. Thank you. But he also wrote, which I think is even more important maybe than James, is Erasure, which was made into the film American Fiction, which won an Oscar.
Be distinguished from Pulp Fiction.
Yes, definitely not Pulp.
I'm kidding.
Well,
But also
wait until you get to my list. But okay, keep on.
works by Cormac McCarthy. Partly similar. Here, I'm going to compare Cormac McCarthy to Shakespeare, which I feel like Matt will be okay,
I'm okay with that.
because he really he gets to what it means to be human, not just the good, mostly the bad, but somehow the good also shows up in his works.
This will not shock you, but McCarthy was also, he was on my list too.
Good. Yeah. And then also Jesmyn Ward. Jesmyn Ward's most popular or lauded book is Salvage the Bones, which is set just in the days before, during, and after Hurricane Katrina. So it's extremely timely. But I need to tell listeners, it is one of the roughest books I have ever read. I had to put it down and walk away. It's very violent and tragic. My favorite of her books, which I've mentioned on podcasts before, I think it was my favorite book of 20 whatever when we did a list, was Sing Unburied Sing. But all of those authors are very challenging. The other two books I put, I said The Book Thief, and that one partly because similar to Piranesi, it is super unique in the way that it's told and formatted. I mean, hello, the narrator is death, but more than that, the way it's told, if you even just open it, you'll very quickly see by the format that it's not written like other books. But also it's important because it talks about World War II, which I guess actually I just blew my own criteria because he didn't write it during World War II. But anyway, whatever. And then Never Let Me Go, which
that's a good one.
A book by Katsuo Ishiguro, who somehow he wrote Never Let Me Go, which is dystopian futuristic book. And I was about to say something that would have been a spoiler, but anyway, I'm not going to tell you the twist, but it's
Read the book, people. It's quietly disturbing.
It's disturbing. But the fact that he also wrote The Remains of the Day, has unrequited love for the chambermaid or whoever, is bizarre to me. But anyway, Katsuo Ishiguro is fantastic, and that's my favorite of his books. So those are my books. For art, I just apologize. I apologize profusely. I don't know a lot of 21st century artists, but the one that I think is iconic and impactful, and much like Shakespeare, is an artist of the people, is Banksy.
I think he's obviously the choice.
Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, yay! So he is
Like-
my only artist that I have, and it is not because I don't think any other 21st century artists are worthy, it's because I don't know of them. So I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's interesting because you kind of were using. I saw two different approaches in the list you had for novelists and visual artists. For the novelists, it was folks who may not be popular in the mainstream.
Right.
You know, like they're well thought of, you know, like won the Pulitzer or whatever, but people who aren't in that world wouldn't necessarily know of them. So there you're kind of banking on, in the end, excellence will out, right?
Yes.
Like when it's all sifted through, even though it wasn't super popular at the time,
Yeah.
future critics will find it and they'll praise it. You know, so you know, there's plenty of examples of this happening. Like Gatsby was a moderate success and then
Correct.
you know
Yeah.
grew in reputation later.
Now, I will say, actually, going back a little bit to novels, I forgot. I didn't write this one down. I think in very different ways, and this might, hopefully listeners won't laugh at me. Why do I care so much what people think? Whatever. Hunger Games, I think, is a very important phenomenon, and it definitely challenging, and it also feels hopefully not prophetic. But I mean, I don't really think we're going to have Hunger Games. But as far as divisiveness and the devaluing of human life and the overvaluing of like the lifestyle that they have in the Capitol, and also, unlike most blockbuster series, she knows how to draw a character. Like, you could give me a line of dialogue and I could probably tell you who said it.
So that's very interesting because I think that's a perfectly valid choice.
At Sunrise on the Reaping, and it is the best one of the entire thing. It's the prequel with it's Haymitch's Hunger Games. And I cried for days.
Wow.
So like you said, I mean, part of this is it's a cultural phenomenon, which again, if we're picking one or two works that'll survive in 500 years, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And two, you know, it gets, I think people can turn their noses at it because it's YA. There's Jennifer Lawrence in the movie, whatever. I remember, so Danielle, when she was in college, her literature professor like knew Suzanne Collins from before she was famous. So she sort of
series before 100 Games.
yeah, so she sort of alerted her class, including Danielle, because like, hey, there's this new book series by this author. I think she's really good. Check it out. So Danielle likes to say she read it before it was famous.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
me and you too.
There you go. There you go. But then to that Banksy point, that's sort of the opposite, right? Again, listeners, we are not saying that Banksy is the finest visual artist of our era.
No.
We are not.
No.
We are saying he is perhaps the one visual artist who normies know about.
Right. And there's an evocative. And I did kind of laugh at myself for putting him down for writing him down as someone whose art will survive 500 years, considering that he literally shredded one of his pieces of art as soon as it was auctioned off.
I know many of us, I know for me, I thought Banksy was super cool when I was in college and I got tired of him by the time I was like 24. I suspect a lot of people are in that same boat, but if you're going to back one horse from the visual arts, it might be the one guy who's broken through to mainstream.
Yeah. I really want to know who he is, even though if I knew who he was, I would go, I don't know who that is. You know,
Honestly, that's probably partly why he's popular too.
nobody knows
know?
how he gets away. Like, how does he even do that? So the mystery of it, how does he paint and no one sees him?
I don't know, but I love it, and that's probably what adds to his mystique.
Oh, of course it is.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I think it will endure.
Okay, but here's the question that I think about is what is the difference between good art and lasting art and sensationalism and lasting art?
Oh gosh, I don't know. That might be a
Well,
whole
it is hard to untangle, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of it, you know, when we're looking back at the past, we have some indications of what the popular stories are because we'll see indications of them everywhere, right? Like we know the Odyssey and the Iliad have been popular for a long time, even though, you know, for a long time they were probably just oral stories told by bards before they were written down in any form. And we know this because a lot of the ancient sources viewed them as sort of the definitive works, et cetera, et cetera. But for other works, it's hard to distinguish what was popular and what was considered excellent. And
like you said, Shakespeare wasn't considered excellent.
no, he wasn't highbrow at the time because, you know, I just wrote plays. That's what normal people watch. Bleh.
Right.
And, you know, same thing with Jane Austen. Her books weren't considered especially fancy because,
Fluffy.
yeah, they're fluffy. They're trifles. They've endured because, well, yeah, maybe,
The humanity.
yeah.
It's about the human, and to me, that's why I think Banksy. There's something about the fact that his art is as simple as it is, but you feel what you feel. It seems like when you look at it, you are feeling exactly what he wanted you to feel.
Yeah, along those lines, if we were having this podcast, when Jane Austen's writing, if there's a chance all of us being humans wanting to seem like literary cultured people would be like, Jane Austen, it's a trifle, it's just popular sensationalism. Where actually we would just have our blinders on if we were looking at it more objectively, like, no, it's actually really good. And if you try to stop worrying about whether you're highbrow or not, you'd see that.
And it's because she knew humans.
Yeah.
Same way.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. Theater, Hamilton.
Yeah.
Because
I hope it does.
It was such a change. It was such a marked change. And also it addressed an historical figure that, they were about to take his face off the money. Did you know that? They were in disgust.
Graceful.
Moving him because nobody knew who he was. Yep. And then Lin-Manuel said, hang on. No.
That's right.
So, yeah. And even if you don't like the music from it, which I do, there are a couple songs that kind of I get tired of because they're repetitive. But oh my gosh, Room Where It Happened. Hello. And do yourself a favor, people, and look up the Tony Award performance. Because it's the 25th anniversary, which is crazy to me. 25th anniversary of Hamilton.
What?
This year.
Oh, yeah. I knew it. I was wrong.
And they did, they had Lin-Manuel and the original, almost the whole original cast came out and did a performance. So look that up. And then just for media, TV and movies and stuff. So some of the episodes of Black Mirror, I think they ask important questions because and for the love of all that is holy, do not watch the one with the president and the pig. Don't watch that one. No, don't. It's traumatic.
What?
No, just don't. Look it up.
I've heard the description. I haven't seen the show.
Don't. Someone told me not to watch it, and I ignored them, and I was read it for the rest of my life. Anyway, but some of the episodes, and each of them is it's standalone. There's not a through line. They're all completely standalone. But what they do is they take the technology that we have today and they imagine the worst possible uses that it could be in the future. So like one of the episodes, they have stuff installed in your eye where if you want to remember something, you can like rewind and see it again in your head. And just how, because of who we are as humans, just exactly how horrible all of the technology could be because of how we would use it. So, so Black Mirror, the movie WALL-E.
Wow, that was a tonal shift there. Black Mirror, the Prime Minister and the Pig, and then WALL-E.
No, I said don't watch.
Don't watch that one.
Agree with WALL-E, yeah.
No, so just to Black Mirror really quick, I think that's an interesting choice because I think that you could see a world where that's selected sort of like an interesting time capsule, right?
Yeah, because they'd be like, look at what they thought would happen.
Oh, so naive. Little did they know that the microbots were going to kill all of them. But
that would be the microbots laughing.
Yeah, that's Peter Thiel or Jeff Bezos in his fortress underneath the sea.
Leaving all the most horrendous people.
I'm sorry. But anyway, I could see that part, just looking back, as an interesting cultural artifact. Like, this technology was new at the time. They didn't see where it was going. Here was sort of a pessimistic view of it, going that way.
Look how right they were.
Oh, they didn't know the half of it.
Yeah. And my favorite Black Mirror episode, by the way, is called White Christmas. It is excellent. Anyway. And then here's another tonal shift from WALL-E. Are you guys familiar with Bo Burnham?
Yes.
Okay, so during 2020, he filmed himself in lockdown. He had no crew. He wrote, filmed, edited everything, the entire, and I can't remember how many hours the actual final product is, but it's called Inside. And but he filmed it over the course of the year. So like you watch it, and watching it now would probably be traumatic because you watch his hair growing because dude can't get a haircut because he's stuck in his house. And so, but you can watch like he loses weight and his mood
He
shifts.
lost weight.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I gained weight. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Well, he lived alone and he goes and there's like a sense of despair that happens. And so I feel like if you want to know what 2020 felt like, that's going to be important. And also, I mean, some of it is lighthearted because he's a comedian. So, but he's a dark comedian. He's extremely bright and very
Good comedians have a really good handle on people.
well. That's why they're good comedians.
Well, yeah, but they like.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with your timelessness, your Imago Dei, like the core, what it means to be human. Like they had their fingers on that pulse.
Well, and I feel like that's what Inside does so well is it shows what happens to us as people when we aren't doing what we were made to do, which is to be with other people.
Yeah, I love that.
And so it is in turn, like sometimes super fast, it goes from really funny to like, oh my gosh, like devastating because of what's happening to him. And how his art changes over the course of being isolated.
Wow.
So he won multiple Emmys, Grammys, the Peabody Award. It's not for kids. I mean, he's not like running around naked or anything, but it's dark.
Sure.
It's dark. But a really funny song from it is White Woman's Instagram. It's very funny. So you should look up White Woman's Instagram and then you'd be like, I don't know. We're spitballing. So that's my list.
No, I think that's a good list because it shows several different types of art that could endure. Again, for novels, you're betting on quality over necessarily popularity, betting that quality will out in the end. For visual arts, you have Banksy because he's like the one who's broke through the mainstream. And for the others, you seem to have like the time capsule idea where you look back like, what's a good window into like the 2020 lockdowns or this particular technology first hitting the market. So I think that's a very good way to spread out your portfolio.
Phew.
Yeah, I'm okay.
All right. Well, so now Christina, let's talk about your list. First off, what criteria were you using?
You know, that's a great question. I kind of went piece of art by piece of art. And so I don't know that I think I'm trying to think. I do have a couple like themes running through the ones that I chose. They're very similar to Mandy's. I did, of course, kind of want to think through, what makes something good art versus sensationalism. And, in front of your point at the beginning of the episode, Matthew, was interesting too about, well, what actually survives? Is it because it's good art or is it because that's literally the only record we have of this time period?
It's the one manuscript that survived the fire.
Right.
Yeah.
It's right. So, I mean, so to be frank, I did not look at these pieces of art in that way. So that was not a criteria. However, it is a very fascinating thing to think about because everything, and as artists, right? I mean, this is a podcast of the Anselm Arts Guild, and it really makes us think what we create matters. Because what if randomly the thing we create is that one thing that represents humanity? And
The one thing the aliens take is like, that's what humans were like before they go to the next planet to conquer.
See that? So be what's the word? Responsible people.
Yes.
There are people who are kind of already popular, but like the one person that I wrote, the two things that I thought of from the 20th century. One was the show Star Trek. I actually
So this is why you wanted to break the rules. So you could shoehorn Star Trek.
Yeah, she needed William Shatner.
Oh gosh.
Well, I would.
I need the trouble with tribbles. 500 years from now, they'll be talking all about those tribbles.
It's true. I mean,
What's that reptile suit man? He fights the Gorn. YouTube it, everyone. It's great.
So my favorite episode is when McCoy gets like he has all these wounds on him and the alien woman takes them on herself. And I'm like, wow, type of Christ much?
That's cool.
Yeah. And then she dies because she takes his wounds away from him.
Yeah, no, I think it was almost predictive before its time. I would say, in 500 years, I wouldn't be surprised if space was sort of another frontier. I think there's, it might not be with aliens and blasters and tribbles, but I think the mentality and approach of the show is very, very American. It's very progress forward approach to America's identity of the last 200 plus years. So I would say, given that it has kind of continued in that vein, we've had lots of Star Trek spin-offs.
There's a current one, isn't there?
Yeah, there's at least one series out right now.
So I think, that kind of shows a little bit, well, this is not just a one and done thing. That was like, very early 60s that came out.
No, the more I think about it, the more I like this as a pick, because it is something that has really seeped into the popular culture. So, 500 years from now, anyone doing any sort of study of like the late 20th century into today will come across Star Trek and pop culture. Really, along with Star Wars, it's spearheaded fandom is like its own thing. Right. And it's also a good time capsule, especially the original series, this sort of starry-eyed, optimistic brand of progressivism, this sort of like belief in human progress and spreading of knowledge and enlightenment that could be useful for understanding that period.
And the contrast with Spock being half human, it really plays up what it is to be human and what parts of him are not.
Space, the final frontier, to go where man is comfortable.
To boldly go.
Oh, yes. How could I forget that? Yeah, there's that. And it coming out of, like the whole World War II situation and just really trying to push through, like, where can humanity go and what are we capable of? And there's just a lot of that. And I think that's, again, very much an American mentality, but also it's just been a huge part of the identity. And it also represents really humanity's desire to grow and to explore and be curious. And that's kind of, I would say, a touchstone of being Imago Dei, curiosity and our longing to learn, explore. So yeah, I would say Star Trek, honestly. I would not be surprised. It's even more than Star Wars, like you said. It's Star Wars is great fandom. It's great storytelling in a lot of ways. The actors are great. The other one I was really thinking of that's more from the 20th century is Frank Lloyd Wright. Partly because he paved the way for sort of an entirely different approach to architecture. But he didn't take it all the way into the postmodern world of utilitarian architecture, sort of like Cold War, that sort of thing.
Still beautiful.
It was still beautiful, and he used nature as his inspiration. And so he was determined to follow beauty before function. However, his real determination was to marry them both in an effortless, design. I think he succeeded.
I agree.
I think, as much as you might not favor his taste, he's not my favorite. Like, I would much prefer to live in, a French chateau than a Frank Lloyd Wright house, but that's my personal.
Give me Art Deco and Art Nouveau.
Oh, goodness.
I love both of those.
Yeah, me too. And yes, especially I think as someone who loves nature, I deeply, deeply respect the fact that he drew his inspiration and he drew his design from the world around us. And I think people have been drawing their inspiration from nature for as long as humanity has existed.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, it's a touchstone. So if I were to say there's a theme running through my, things, Matt, it would be touchstone. And I think all these things have touchstones into, parts of humanity that will just never change.
So that is interesting, because I think that argument makes a lot of sense. But one thing it does presuppose, especially for an architect, is that his buildings are going to remain standing for the next 500 years. Because it's hard to admire the work of an architect who doesn't have any buildings who are still.
Oh, I disagree. Not with photographs now.
Well, that's presupposed that we're going to have photographs after the aliens take over.
Okay, well, that's presupposing something. We're now presupposing that nothing exists.
Well, even about Banksy, if photographs don't exist.
That's what I mean.
We'll keep the little, I don't know.
I don't know either. I think your point fails. I'm just going to...
Right there.
All right, moving on.
Oh my gosh. No, but I mean, architecture, I feel like, is a really good point. I think a lot of architecture architects have been sort of not recognized as artists. I think of Art Nouveau in particular, and of course I can't remember his name. He was French. But he purposely took architecture in a very artistic direction and deeply wanted to take nature and design living spaces and monuments and places and buildings and cities and towns, all the things, be like more in line with nature. And so anyway, it's kind of the same thing. And yet some of those things are extremely long lasting. So anyway, that's Frank Lloyd Wright. And then the other two are more, and you'll be happy about this, Megan, from the 21st century.
Oh, look at you. Not completely disregarding the assignment.
So I would say as far as publications, I really loved, I was thinking about this, very recent, the Rabbit Room's Every Moment Holy book of liturgies. Especially there's one, the recent one is the Liturgy of the People. And I don't know if you guys have that rendition. For listeners who don't know, the Rabbit Room does these beautiful publications of what they could call Every Moment is Holy. So they're a collection of prayers for every moment of life. Liturgies on the prayer book from the Church of England, the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, all of those collected prayers. It's kind of following along that line, that they are written prayers that you can take anywhere in your context and pray them to the Lord with, So I think because prayers are timeless, I think that these ones are particularly beautifully written. Prayers are timeless because if they're written well and they still convey the human suffering and the struggles, they will last. So I think, that there would be some anachronistic, probably prayers in there. So we'd have to do some printed, updated editions, right? Because there's the prayers for the sirens, the sounding of the sirens when you hear a siren, the prayers that you pray.
500 years from now, sirens will be activated in our brain by the uploaded consciousness of Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, so there's the...
Sounds like a Black Mirror episode. So yeah, there will be an acronym.
Yes.
But those will be historically interesting.
I think so. I think prayers, again, we have prayers from the church fathers that we still pray, We have prayers from, the ancient, Egyptian churches. There are prayers that have been written down, that have been memorized throughout the ages. Anyway, this is just a beautiful, very unique thing that Rabbit Room has created. And the last volume is the Prayers of the People. And they sent out a call to a whole bunch of people and say, if you were to write a liturgy about something, what would it be? Send it in and we might publish it.
So I like that approach that you took, because it's an angle we haven't really been looking at. It's things that might be used by the church 500 years from now. And I think a liturgy is a perfectly valid guess at something that we might be using, because, there are a lot of liturgies that we use that are at least 500 years old, if not older. So I think that's a very good approach to it. So what was the last thing on your list?
The last thing, honestly, as an artist, I would say we talked about him in a recent podcast, but honestly, I'm thinking Makoto Fujimura might have some impact that would last a couple more centuries. And this is why I think his approach is both modern and ancient, right? So he takes really old techniques. Mm-hmm. He does slow art. Nihonga, I think is what it's called. And he elevates it with a timeless sort of technique and incorporates deep truths about God and the world. And so even though we arguably right now live in a post-Christian secularized society, truth really does always prevail. Mm-hmm. And while the populace at large, in 500 years, assuming aliens don't take over map, might not have prints of Fujimura in their houses, I still think that his work will still largely be known and respected in the Christian and art circles. So that's a suspicion that I have. I think he's made a big enough splash in, first of all, his knowledge, his ability, and his the reasoning on why he does it and the effect that his art has on people. That yeah.
All right. I like it. So again, I I think the approach you use with a lot of those makes sense. So again, you're sort of diversifying your portfolio there. You have the things that are pop in the popular culture. You have the things like Makoto Fujimura, who is popular within certain circles, but you're counting on the excellence enduring in before too long.
Well, and the fact that he uses ancient texts
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
And also the liturgy. Now here, along those lines, this is bouncing around. Me and your husband, Brian, were texting about this, Christina.
All right.
Do you know one of the prayers in the Book of Common Prayer, a prayer for humility, is attributed to Jane Austen? What?
So cool.
I know, right?
The Jane Austen.
That's right, Austen Bros. All right, so now let's get to mine. So before we get to mine, I want to very briefly talk, because again, I think ChatGPT has certain uses. It should be used cautiously. Kids, don't just ChatGPT your paper. That's a bad idea. But I think it's good for getting like the gist of the internet, right? So I asked ChatGPTs like, hey, what art from the present day do you think will still be popular in 500 years? And the answers I thought were at least interesting. Because they really focused on things that were timely now, right? Or like something that they view as, because again, ChatGPT is basically the gist of the internet. So it has like The Road by Cormac McCarthy, because this, yep. So post-apocalyptic survival, Margaret Atwood.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Sure, I should have thought of that.
It has, it actually has Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, because again, it takes a look at these issues of like bioscience that might be relevant going forward. Again, like time capsule-y. Another one, I'm not the target audience by any means, but it's by this person, Ocean Vuong, and great title, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous.
I read that. Don't read that.
I wasn't going to. But again, this is looking at like LGBTQ issues, which you can see has this time capsule issue.
Beautifully written, but don't read that.
Great title.
Not because it's LGBTQ, just other things.
Well, again, I'm not exactly the target audience here, but again, you can see it's looking at like time capsule stuff. Yeah. So movies, Christopher Nolan, I think is a good thing. Here's one, Social Network. I love The Social Network, and again, it's looking time capsule, this sort of creation story of social media, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I love that movie. Danielle hated the movie. I think it's outstanding.
I'll watch anything with Jesse Eisenberg.
I think it's the movie of my generation, but I digress. So that, again, that's just the sort of what the ChatGPT thinks the internet thinks. So they're looking at things that they think are significant about our time. They think social media, they think these like bioethics, they think LGBTQ, like sexual orientation identity stuff will still be important 500 years from now. That 500 years from now, they'll look back on this time as like, that's when this happened. Right. Maybe they're right, maybe not. Who knows?
More of a historical.
Yeah, exactly. So let me get to mine because I created my list on the working assumption that only a couple are gonna really endure. Again, Shakespeare's the one guy from 500 years ago who the normies know about. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about what is in the popular culture that has one, just pervades it. So you look back at this period, it's like you can't get away from it, but also has these enduring, I was thinking like myth-making qualities. Where it's like what seems to be saying something about our culture, what seems to be myth-making in a way that's roughly analogous to like the Iliad or the Odyssey or Beowulf or the Tale of Genji or whatever. Mm-hmm. So here's the two that I have. I'll just rip them off like a Band-Aid because I think you two are going to maybe object. Spider-Man and Harry Potter.
Oh, I'm kidding. Yeah, I know. No, I'm down with Spider-Man, and I already knew you were going to say Harry Potter's.
It was one of the jokes in my intro. Yeah. I feel more confident about Spider-Man than Harry Potter, but anyway, keep going.
I knew you were going to say Harry Potter as soon as you proposed this podcast. It was not the intro. But no, I think Spider-Man for sure, especially just because of how many different ways I feel like they could, in 500 years, there's going to be a college class on why were they so obsessed with Spider-Man and why did they make so many iterations and why was Into the Spider-Verse the best one?
It is the best one. But yeah, I think Spider-Man is, if I had to pick one thing that would endure 500 years from now, it would be Spider-Man.
Well, honestly, it's already endured from when was Spider-Man?
Oh yeah, I think it was like I want to say like 1960, somewhere around there. I'll look that up as I'm
Why
talking.
would it be Spider-Man and not Batman or superheroes or Marvels or
Because
super
Spider-Man is
comic
Peter,
books?
because Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And Peter Parker is the reluctant hero teenage boy. Peter Parker is it Peter Parker?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Peter's over there grinning because this is his favorite.
So
Spider-Man's his favorite.
yes, I agree with Mandy.
Most human of
And-
all.
Okay.
And to that point, I actually did think about. I was like, well, what about Superman? What about
Well,
Batman?
Human. He's an
Yeah.
alien.
Yeah, so Superman is important because he was the first sort of modern superhero, right? But I think it's Spider-Man for a lot of the reasons Mandy put forward. First Spider-Man comic was in 1963, so it's more recent relatively. But I think he is the most relatable of the superheroes. They really broke the mold in a lot of ways because, first of all, they made Spider-Man a teenager, which was very unusual for the time. Usually they're these fully grown men. And two,
When they made him a teenager, was that when the comics?
yeah,
yeah.
So he's been a
Origins, the original, he's a teenager.
he's been a teenager from the start.
Yeah, he's
It-
just this boy who gets bit by a spider.
And two, they made Spider-Man a nerd. Like that, apparently they got some pushback about that. He's like, well, because a lot of the superheroes from the early times, they're like super cool. They were dashing. They're handsome. They'd always get the girl. They're super. But like Spider-Man, like Peter Parker, he's a nerd. He like works for the paper. Like
Raised by his aunt.
he's raised by his aunt. The girls don't like him. The girl he likes doesn't like him back. You know, he's a nerd. But that makes him more relatable because, again, he's just sort of the person who's bit by a spider. He's made a superhero by a happenstance. And you'll see that particular origin story, with great power comes great responsibility, right? We all know exactly what that means. And
True, that alone is
that's been iterated so many times where a lot of contemporary, like there's so many versions of Spider-Man. A lot of the contemporary stuff presuppose we all know it.
Yeah.
In a similar way that, you know, Sophocles, yeah, like
a very common.
yeah, like Sophocles presupposed its audience knew about the Trojan War. We all presuppose that we know that the audience knows what Spider-Man's origin story is. If you look, this is done so masterfully in the Into the Spider-Verse movies by Sony. Into the Spider-Verse, what is it? Through the Spider-Verse. So good. And they both presuppose knowledge of this universe, presuppose this origin story that has like, again, mythological, almost archetypal significance.
But in every single Spider-Verse, the humanity is still there, even when he's a pig.
Exactly. And it also shows how many iterations there are. There's so many already.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance that could keep going for a long time. So he could be sort of like a King Arthur figure or something like that, where there's so many different versions of it, but he endures. So
Very interesting point.
yeah. If I were to pick one thing that I think will still be around 500 years from now, it'll be Spider-Man.
I agree.
Yeah, so that was my main thing. Harry Potter, it's basically similar things, but I'm a little less confident about it just because it hasn't been iterated as much, but super popular. A lot of there's this myth making that sort of our culture has taken over. But I again, not quite as confident. Going into things like movies, I struggled with this. Because I think the obvious choice, again, fudging, sort of like, Christina was flouting the rules. I think the obvious choice is Star Wars because, again, it's myth-making, it's sort of in the culture, it's archetypal. I think a lot of people could look back on it as significant for that reason. But I'm also looking at here's what I was thinking about, because it's related to a podcast we had. I think the Dune movies might be something that endures because they're so well done. They're so cinematic. I think they're popular, not uber popular, but I think they might endure just because they have this combination of myth making, story that captures some of the zeitgeist, and are just excellent. Even though I don't enjoy watching them, but I acknowledge their excellence. Then in terms of music, Taylor Swift, right? It has to be Taylor Swift.
I knew you were going to say...
Who else could it be?
It's not going to be her, no.
Well, who? I think it has to
Maybe it's
be.
nobody. Maybe we don't make good
You
enough
choose.
music right
You choose pass.
now. I choose no one.
What I
That's why I have no music down here, because I couldn't think of any.
what I
Give your reasons for Taylor Swift. I might be
Is
on
it just
board.
because she's popular?
Yeah,
she's
because she's popular, I might not be on board, but she is.
well, I think that's a good. She's the most popular artist since Michael Jackson, maybe since the Beatles.
Okay, but she's popular now, and I don't know that that carries 500
Yeah.
years. If you're saying 50, maybe. And I just want to, for the record, I think what she has done just as an individual, particularly as a young woman, is astounding. And so I don't not like her. I just am not a fan of her music. Like I think she's a phenomenon, and for good reason. She works so hard, and she's done a lot in her business, and she's very generous with her. I just don't want to make Taylor Swift mad at me. No, I don't want to make this.
The first rule of the internet is you never upset the Swifties. Let me say, I for one welcome our Taylor Swift overlords.
All I'm saying right now is I just don't. I think her stuff is too much of the now.
And again, if we're gonna
To be wrong, I don't know.
fudge this, I think the obvious band that would last is the Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the
I think so.
I think, okay, let me put it this way. In 500 years, they will know who Taylor Swift was. Will they still be listening to her music? I don't know.
so you're saying that maybe like the graduate students studying early 21st century
Yes.
will know about Taylor Swift, but like the normie
And-
walking the streets of Parsec 5 won't know about it.
She's anthropologically and historically important.
I'm beginning to think Matt has actually created this whole the world we're living in, Mandy.
I
In
think
500
so.
years.
Guys, I wrote a novella that was a series of letters sent from me in the future when I'm in my 80s back to present day me. It's on my website. So everyone, look at MatthewMelema.com. I titled it Cyborg Evangelical.
If I can go back into the 20th century, Ray Bradbury endures 500 years.
There you go.
No contest.
I like that.
Well, I guess if we're really doing Taylor Swift, we also have to say, okay, well, look back a couple hundred years. Why Bach? Why Handel? Why Vivaldi? You know, like,
Yeah, all these peers, right? The Mozart, the Bach, the Swift, you know.
Beethoven. So why?
I just said that to get the grimace out of Mandy that she just gave. But anyway, so the final thing that I'm just trying to figure out, and it's too early to know anything, is how will people 500 years from now look at our video games? Because this is a brand new medium, you know, in the broad sweep of things. There weren't really any video games till the early 1980s. Just in that short period of time from Pong on Atari to now, there's just been massive continental changes, right? So will people look back on it as like, oh, look, Super Mario, that's historically significant. Will anyone care? Well, what will video games be like?
I have
Will-
no idea.
Will our overlords from the Andromeda Galaxy even permit video games? I don't know. But that's just one thing I could pick video games that I think are significant, but they're 500 years now, they'll be viewed as so crude and early, because again, we're in the early days of a genre that I think is going to endure, but I don't know.
I still remember when my first friend, the first of my friends, got Atari, and they were playing Pong on their TV, and my mind was blown. I'm like, how can you be controlling what's on the screen?
Yep.
And then here we are.
Yeah, and here we are. Speaking of video games, I don't want to interrupt you for long, but I was thinking of art and I was thinking of music, and I was thinking of John Williams.
Oh, John Williams.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Yes.
Good job.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like even our listeners would be like, "Yep,
Yep.
no need to explain."
No, that's a really good one.
Given.
Cool.
All right. And again, that shows that it's this sweet spot of popularity.
Yep.
He's written the scores for some of our most popular movies. He's the composer that even normies know about. And it's just it's just excellent. So that's a
Music. And I would probably say he also started a lot of the movement into cinematic music.
Yes.
So like it's now kind of its own thing.
so historically significant too.
Yes.
Well, that's really good.
Agreed.
All right. So any closing thoughts on a message to the people 500 years
I do not
from now?
Yeah.
Listening to this, hiding in caves from the from the
We love you, and that's about all we can say to that.
Somebody unplug Ye's consciousness.
that they're just like trying to mute it. No, we must not disrespect Ye. He has ears everywhere.
Yes, that's
Ye is watching. But anyway,
so.
on that note, things are winding down at the Anselm Society Digital Pub. The fire's down to embers, the customers trundling home, and you've polished off your final glass, and now you know you have to get home right now if you're going to dodge the curfew from the robot overlords. Once again, Believe to See is a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. If you have an extra 30 seconds or so right now, please rate and review the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.